And for the first 3 or 4 months of every year, and that's while the legislature is in session, I'm sort of secluded in the State House, can't travel as much, and also surrounded by a lot of men during that time period. And of course, we appreciate their service. But I have to say that just getting out and mingling with the female powerhouses of Indiana who are moving us forward is very refreshing, and I think that's exactly what we see here today. I heard a story once about 3 men who were hiking through the forest, and they came upon this huge raging river, and of course they needed to get to the other side. So the first man prayed, "God, please give me the strength to cross the river." So God gave him big arms and strong legs, and he was able to swim across in about 2 hours, but he almost drowned twice. And after witnessing that, the second man prayed, "God, please give me the strength and the tools to cross the river." So God gave him a rowboat and strong arms and strong legs, and he was able to row across in about an hour, but he almost capsized once. So seeing that, what had happened to the first 2 men, the third man prayed, "God, please give me the strength and the tools and the intelligence to cross the river." So God turned him into a woman, and she checked the map, and she hiked 100 yards upstream and walked across the bridge. You know, sometimes it's that fresh perspective that can make all the difference. So whether you are crossing a bridge or you're making a deal to buy one, Hoosier women represent just a wealth of skill and a wealth of knowledge. I'm looking at a room here today filled with some of our most professional and our most motivated women in Indiana. You have such great things to contribute to our state, and I want to thank you for using your skills, whether that's using your skills in business or in community service and government, education, or whatever the field. We thank you for using your skills to keep our state moving forward. From our first day in office, the governor and I have been entirely focused on our state's economic health. Now, we've never operated under any illusions that state government can swoop in and make everything perfect. We know that government doesn't create wealth, but government can help create the conditions where you can create wealth and prosperity. We want to make our state the long-term choice for investors so that all Hoosiers will have more jobs and better jobs, so that our children will have those kinds of opportunities that we've had to live here, to raise their families, and to start their own businesses if they wish. I know we have a long road ahead of us, and our ultimate goal is still a long way off, but Indiana's economic comeback has begun. Companies are consistently turning to Hoosiers to fill their needs for growth. With every month, we have a dozen more or so deals that are sealed, and there are new jobs coming in. We work very hard to attract a lot of new companies to the state of Indiana, but we worked equally hard to help our existing companies grow. Since January of 2005, the governor and I and our state's Economic Development Corporation have worked with community leaders, we've worked with economic development professionals throughout the state, and that partnership has led to more than 545 business deals. And these are deals where businesses have committed to create more than 67,000 new jobs for Hoosiers. And with that comes more than $15 billion in investment in our state. I should mention, too, that more than 14,000 of those new jobs have been insourced from international companies who are understanding that Indiana is one of the best places to do business. The investment has happened in small towns, and it's happened in big cities alike. The bottom line is, when Indiana competes with other states for new jobs, we're winning 90% of the time. And one important fact is often overlooked, and that's that more than 60% of all of these competitive deals are happening with Hoosier businesses who decided to stay here rather than going elsewhere, and they've made major investment in our state, and they've hired more of our friends and our neighbors. We've worked very hard to improve our state's competitiveness as well, from telecommunications reform, one of the most dramatic in the country, to rebuilding our state's highway transportation infrastructure. We have some important new business tax credits as well, even our new health care coverage plan. All of these things have helped us construct this incredible economic toolbox, and it's giving us a national reputation as the best place to do business. And we know that investors are taking notice of that. We're very proud that our state's unemployment rate is the lowest among all of our neighboring states, but we're always looking for ways to improve on that. We continue to build for our future with now 2 honestly balanced budgets back to back. We have an improved credit rating for the state of AA+. And recently, the issue of Governing Magazine shows a map of the United States. It shows the states listed in red and in black. The states in black that have honestly balanced budgets and a solid surplus, and Indiana is the only state in black in a sea of red ink in the Midwest. Let me say that I love the title of this seminar, Whale Hunting Women. Now, to me, that just evokes this image of strength and the image of the thrill of the hunt and the ultimate triumph of a good strategy over some elusive prize. And I can identify with that feeling. There have been a few whale hunting expeditions in my life journey so far. During my 12 years in the Indiana Senate, every day was a whale hunting experience. I represented 5 counties in south central Indiana, and 3 of those 5 counties had extremely high unemployment. So most of my time and energy was devoted to measures that would boost economic development, quite frankly, measures that would encourage business to locate in those distressed counties, or certainly provide incentives for those businesses to grow. I just mentioned that because no member of the General Assembly can be successful without conquering the art of the deal. You know, politics is, after all, the art of persuasion. And in 2004, when this fellow named Mitch Daniels tapped me to join him in his bid for the governor's office, at that time I was running for re-election to the Senate for my 4th term. I had no opponent that year. I held the number 2 leadership position in the Senate majority. So I could very easily have passed on that and been comfortable with that decision, but I know a good challenge when I see one, and I did become Mitch's partner, not only in that race, but ultimately his partner within state government, and I've never looked back. It's been a great adventure so far, and I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to help make a difference in the lives of Hoosiers as well. When I think about the major expeditions during my time as lieutenant governor, just the last 3.5 years, and Dion mentioned something about this, it's just hard to top that experience during the federal government's base realignment and closure. That was in 2005. The federal government, as many of you know, it periodically reviews the nation's network of defense installations. Usually there are many bases that end up on the chopping block, and they're closed, of course, and thousands of jobs go with those bases. And that has been the history in the state of Indiana. If you think back, those of us who are of a certain age can recall where we've lost a number of military bases through the years. So we were determined that was not going to happen in 2005. This was during our very first few months in office. And Crane Naval Base, it's in the southwest part of Indiana. We knew Crane was being considered for closure, and there were several other sites in the state that were in some jeopardy. They're all in jeopardy, quite frankly. So I led this all hands-on-deck approach to saving Crane. I'd had a little experience with the BRAC process in 1995, 10 years earlier, because a portion of the Crane base sits within my home county. I knew, however, it would take an extraordinary effort to keep Crane running. And as Dion mentioned, to save those 5,500 jobs that are associated with that base. But the governor and I pledged to do everything that was humanly possible and beyond to keep that asset. And it is such a major player in the economy of South Central Indiana, where we most need jobs. So I traveled to the Pentagon several times. I was making the case that Crane is indeed the best military value in a defense installation, because that is the U.S. Department of Defense's only criteria. I took our state's case to a Department of Defense regional hearing, and that was held in St. Louis. That's where we were essentially competing. All a big competition, and we were competing with many, many other states. Most of the states there were represented by their U.S. senators, and yet Indiana was represented by, gasp, a lieutenant governor, and a woman at that. So to make a long story short, after 8 months or so, when the final decision was made, Crane and several other military installations in our state were saved. And not only did we manage to save Crane, we stand to gain several hundred jobs at DFAS, at the Defense and Accounting System at Fort Bend. But it certainly was a whale of a hunt. We learned a lot. It's the chief reason we now have a division of defense development under the Lieutenant Governor's office. But to me, there couldn't be any greater prize than winning that security for Hoosier workers who depend on those good jobs, and they are good jobs. I've also had the privilege of leading several trade missions around the globe for the state. I led the first U.S. delegation to visit Central America after Congress passed the Central America Free Trade Agreement. Later that same year, I led a trade mission to Taiwan and to Vietnam, and just this February, a mission to Mexico. These are all efforts, of course, to expand our economic boundaries, to find some new opportunities for our Hoosier employers and for our Hoosier workers. Each one of those trips was a great experience. It tends to bring out the diplomat in us. I learned very quickly, however, that it can still come as a surprise for a woman to be in a position of leadership. In 2006, and this was during the mission to Taiwan and then on to Vietnam, I became very much aware of that. I walked into a room one day, into a meeting with some of their top leaders, and my nameplate read, Mr. Becky Skillan. Well, I think they certainly were not expecting me. And it did drive home the fact that not everyone expects a woman to lead. When I talk to women who are leaders in their field, I often hear a common refrain. And I think back to my experience as the majority caucus chairman in the Senate, when it was one of my responsibilities to recruit women to run for open seats in the Senate. So I would talk to incredibly accomplished women throughout the state, and they felt they had to be overqualified in order to succeed. Oh, I couldn't do that. I'm not qualified. And let me say, when I talked to men who were in similar positions, to their credit, they thought they were born qualified. And I said to their credit, because it is all a matter of confidence, isn't it? You know, it's very interesting to hear the two sexes describe their competence to lead and to succeed. But I think nearly everyone here can relate to that sense of being the underdog and needing to prove themselves. I am, from time to time, the only skirt in a room full of suits. And so I know the challenges that women face in responding to that call of leadership. Thankfully, though, we live in a country and we live in a culture that values women leaders. In Indiana, we have a responsibility to ourselves, to our daughters, to our nieces, to all the young women of the next generation to step up and do what President Kennedy called us to do many years ago. He said, it's time for a new generation of leadership to cope with new problems and new opportunities, for there is a new world to be won. Well, in Indiana, a rejuvenated state is our new world. And we have the leaders, we have the entrepreneurs, we have the forward thinkers who are going to mold the future, and they're right here in this room today. The extent of our progress depends in so many ways on your willingness to take action, because real leadership is not about position, it's about action. And the challenges that we face, be that our age or our experience or our gender or our sex, all of those challenges make us work harder and they make us learn more. I really enjoy spending time with leaders like you. You know, you are the ones who are driving change in our communities. You're driving change in our economy. And you are the ones who are not afraid of the work that's required to keep our state's economic engine running. As women, you have a very unique perspective on that. Any good business person would tell you that a diversified economy is a thriving economy, and entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of a diversified economy. I'm so proud of the contributions that Hoosier women are making to our state's economic comeback. I want to thank you for rising to that challenge, for taking on new opportunities. You know, it's been said that opportunity is often missed because it shows up on your doorstep dressed in overalls and it looks like work. Well, I have met very few Hoosier women who balk at the thought of hard work. I grew up in rural Lawrence County, and I was surrounded by a number of small business owners and by farmers, and I know firsthand the value and the challenge of hard work. Success requires a commitment to excellence and to diligence, but the reward of the challenge is satisfying. I think Hoosiers were born to work, and I think we do it very well. Even though it's not easy, I think we all know it's usually the hard stuff that is worth most doing. Indiana is so full of opportunity for you. We see evidence of that every day. And I'm sure there was not a woman in this room that wasn't cheering for Angela Brawley as she became the CEO of WellPoint. She is the only female CEO of a Fortune 50 company, and she's right here in Indiana. Well, I think that the key to that kind of success is simple. Angela did not jump out of college and land at the pinnacle of a major corporation. She worked very hard to get where she is today. Like every successful Hoosier, man or woman, she was diligent with the task in front of her. And I know you understand that. You have the desire, you have the resources, you have the energy to find success, the energy to find economic opportunity. And when you take on the work of progress, you're doing something that not just anyone can do. Your ventures, and sometimes that's your adventures, make us prosper and bring us jobs. So thank you for taking on that role. Business growth, economic development, community development are ultimately in your hands. You are the ones who care about the future of our communities. You care about the future of our state. And that's a real reason Indiana will see a complete economic comeback. So thanks so much for all you do, and thanks for having me here today.